go on the Maize and Blue Reviews. Good afternoon, Michigan football. And hello, everybody, and welcome in. We are getting that close where you just peek on around the corner, and this Monday, it's game week. Then we got week 0 first that will take place this Saturday if you're so inclined, and probably are if you're a college football fan. I think I'm going to be inclined to check it out. So it's happening, and I just say sit here, but we are just sitting here talking about Michigan and college football 3 times a week. But, all of the things have been said and will be said over these next, 10 days, whatever. It all gets thrown out the window, and then we actually have our teeth to sink into the season, which is exciting. And Michigan is set up to have an excellent season. We're going to talk about it here today. I'll give you some projections. I had a projection that I have to take off the table as we get ready for the season. I'll talk about that coming up as I look at some of the players and how I think they're going to do, some of the stats, and on each side of the ball, the guys I think that are going to be the stars of the team, that kind of thing. I have been giving Hypetrain different guys from what I hear,
your
different
legacy,
things that are going to guys that are going to contribute, and then really, are getting a lot of hype in training camp and getting into game week. I've got the 6th edition of that, but start with Savion Hiter and Michigan being able to pull in the 5-star running back who was down to Michigan and Tennessee, had Ohio State, even Georgia on the list. And in the end, it was Michigan. Michigan was always there. But when you see the other teams on the board, and then you just read the kids' comments, you think this kid could end up going anywhere. I mean, he wasn't revealing a whole lot. He kept his cards, close to his vest, all of those sort of things. But then, he says he's going to Michigan, which is an absolute coup for Sharon Moore, who stayed in there the whole time and was able to get, I don't have their recruiting board in front of me, but I think he was number 1. Right up top on the board for Michigan. It puts Michigan securely in the top 10. That's not anything that's small. That's a big deal. And, they've got 23 commitments now, but this is the guy that, I could be sitting here if he went to Tennessee and said, hey, they were into it to the end. What are you going to do? You have everything to offer. You can only offer them everything. If you're a team like Michigan, you have everything. If you have all of the boxes that are checked, and Michigan now has all the boxes available that every recruit would say, okay. But then it comes down to, the coaching staff and just how comfortable they are and, what they really believe in. And so if he would have gone elsewhere, he said, hey, it's tough. You're in with the very top guys. You put it all out there, but, you can't force them, to come to your school. But when you do get a guy like this that you coveted, and it makes it feel like it doesn't matter what happens from here on out. I mean, this class is a success, the way things have been going with Michigan football. And, I thought a month ago when Hiter put his announcement date out as August the 19th, the same day that Bryce Underwood turned 18, that if it ended up being Hiter to Michigan, then that would be a day that should be recognized in Michigan football history, maybe as, the great quarterback, presumably a great commitment, obviously, in Underwood and Hiter, maybe a recruiting day, the first annual yesterday. And I still feel like that. I mean, nothing but good news that way. And when it came down to it, and then the arrival, recruiting is a funny thing we talk about momentum. If you get one, especially in June and July, where there's going to be some commitments, you don't have any, and then you'll get a story about, oh well, something, you'll throw something out there. Somebody will, I don't know, maybe sometimes it's factual, sometimes it's just created out of, just to get, people. People are interested, so you got to give them something. So you throw something out there, and oh, it's slow, but then you'll get a commitment, and everybody just gets fired up, and then you get another one the next couple of days. It's like, oh, the momentum, and people just feel great. I have to say this: I followed recruiting for 30 years, Michigan football recruiting, and I have never enjoyed recruiting as much as I do right now. I think that's different for a lot of people. It'd be interesting to see what you folks think. I have a friend who was telling me he's not all that interested in recruiting anymore, and he is as big in recruiting as anybody that I know. And so I was asking him why. I said, "Oh, well, it's the transfer portal." I'm like, "Well, transfer portal is just like recruiting. It's just condensed and even faster, and the same kind of excitement." He said, "No, I like following the guys from early on and then tracking them and then going all the way through." I said, "Yeah, but Michigan would lose out. They would seemingly do everything correctly, and then they would end up losing out on a guy like Hiter. They would have all these things. He would say all the right things in a visit. Oh, man, he loved the coaching staff. Boy, I liked, the players that were hosting them. And then in the end, he'd go to Tennessee and he'd be sitting here and everybody would say, oh, they just dropped the bag on him." That's what everybody would say, because it's probably true. It felt like that anyways. And, now that part is, I was going to say it's out of the equation. Actually, now it's an even playing field when it comes down to that, because Michigan can, and so can the other teams, offer whatever they want, up front, above the table. And it's just a big part of that, which was the other reason that my friend said that it just rubs him the wrong way, that, the kids are getting paid all of this money, and the money part. And, so I get all those things, but, it hasn't ruined it. It hasn't even, I like football as much as I ever had. I think the college game is as healthy now. Yeah. I mean, when I read stories about them going to a 28 team, playoff and everything, I'm thinking, okay, maybe they will. Maybe they'll test that theory if they could ruin it for somebody who loves the game. But, would I rather the money just all go to Michigan, so they could just, give it to the athletic department and, pave State Street with gold or something? No, I think it's fine that the players are getting a share of it. I'm totally fine with that. So the last part I'm going to read, I want to see where the people are at when it came down to Hiter. Michigan fans, however you were looking for a conclusion last week of the whole thing that went down with the Committee on Infractions and everything. And I noticed a lot of Michigan fans, man, they didn't even blink an eye, man. And in fact, they were emboldened by the decision, and it was, kind of a party. But there were some people that it left a little bit of a bad taste in their mouth. And certainly even some of the people that were, sticking their chest out and having fun with it. And look, football's fun, Michigan football, all of that. There's still probably somewhere in there a little bit like, I'm ready to move on, turn the page on this story that had been pretty much almost 2 years, that had been almost a daily, back and forth stuff on the internet. But if there was any sort of lingering bad taste or anything, the Hiter commitment has just flipped everything and has now got the focus on the season and just back where everything is Michigan and everything is looking good. They had to get over that. Whether you want to, however you want to look at it, a little bump in the road, you have to deal with it. You dealt with it. Now it's over. If you want it to linger yourself, you can. However, you deal with that how you want. But it has, to me, last Friday seems like a month ago, or what is going on now, and how the sights are set on the upcoming season, and it can't, I say it can't get here soon enough. I mean, it's here. So I don't know, it's here. after that, I'm, in a way, I'm glad, because there was a lot, I was, it probably happened the week of the opening, against New Mexico. Probably happened, which would be this Monday. That's when that news would have come down. And that would have left, however you felt about the whole, that would have left a little bit of a bad taste, because, you're thinking about, here's the opener, but then you'd had to deal with this for whatever it was, 1, 2, or 3 days, leading right up to the game. It was enough time where it's all gone. And then you get this, which is something to cheer for. So that part is great. But the thing about Hiter is they wanted him. They identified him. He's like I'm going to say the greatest running back of all time. He just looks like it. He's just one of the guys that you just overjoyed if you're a Michigan fan, being able to get the commitment. It's great. I know what's better than great. Nothing. What's better than great might be Underwood. Since Underwood had nothing to do with Michigan being bowl eligible, I don't think, last year when they beat Northwestern. I don't think he had anything to do with beating Ohio State. I know he was practicing during the ReliaQuest Bowl and everything. We saw the video, and it was exciting and everything. I don't think he had anything to do with that particular victory, the three. But since he flipped and has and came aboard, there was a bye week between when Michigan lost that game against Indiana to fall to 5-5, and then before they played Northwestern, that's in between, that's when it happened with Underwood. Since then, they haven't lost a game. And, recruiting has skyrocketed. And, Underwood, it's not lost on me, or I'm sure anybody that's watching this, when you'll see the different socials of the players that will come on through. A lot of them, you see Underwood standing right there, and you see the guys, hanging out. Underwood maybe throwing them a pass, whatever. And you just kind of shake your head. You're like, yeah, you thought about this. We probably talked about it. I probably said it. What it means. But man, everything with Underwood, and that just gets us to the upcoming season. We've talked about it every single day. The effect that this kid is going to have on the team on the field. And then he's going to be there, all indications, right away from the opener. And you say, who knows what's going to happen? But really, the sky's the limit. The sky's the limit when you have a player like this. And, maybe they can make the playoffs this year. I think most people are expecting the Wolverines to make the playoffs this year, but certainly next year and the next year, and how many ever starts that he has. So it's a great time. I don't know, it's always very much a great time, to be a Michigan football fan right now. It's a great time. Let's read some of the feedback here. Mr. Martini is saying Hiter making more Buckeye haters. Yeah, I don't know if it's possible. I mean, Ohio State fans, for a team that won and everything, they've spent an awful lot of time, being down in the dumps about things. When I can recall how Michigan felt last year at this time, and there was even a part of it where I didn't know if you even want the season to start because you were enjoying the off season so much. I don't get that sense from Ohio State fans that they were actually enjoying this off season and everything else. Old Papa, we know that the season's getting close when Papa weighs in. He is going to the opener. It's his first game at the Big House since 2016. What concession stand food should I not miss out on while I am at the game? Now, that is a good question. Not a question for me. The last game that I went to was the rain-soaked Notre Dame game. I think it was 2019, I think. And I believe that was a night game, but I've only sat down in the stands, 2-3 times in the past 30 years. And it's been a while. I sat in the stands the last time was Michigan Nebraska, and who was the quarterback? And I was it was Dylan McCaffrey. And I don't want to say, I was going to call it hoodwinked, but I wasn't tricked. There was reasons that I liked Dylan McCaffrey. I knew that he was Christian's brother, great bloodlines. His, father was a tremendous football player, and his mother's side, there was a Olympian over there. I mean, it was just everything there. And then that Nebraska game, he threw a touchdown. I said, man, this is the greatest. This kid's going to be great. I'm sure of it. And then he couldn't beat out Joe Milton, and it was disappointing. And then he went, whatever it was, Northern Colorado. And I don't know what he did there, but it didn't happen for him. I know it's just a long sideways thing here. It had me thinking about, man, I hadn't been sure about a quarterback, because I had my reservations with Shea Patterson, and then with Milton, I just thought I was a little confused about the competition, because you had it was going into the pandemic and they weren't practicing, and I'm thinking, why is Dylan McCaffrey transferring when these guys aren't even playing? Well, because Joe Milton standing there in his shorts, I think would beat out Patrick Mahomes and Dan Marino and anybody else that would be out there. He throws the greatest football of all time, so that would happen. But we'll see, Papa. Maybe some people can weigh in about the concession stands. My suggestion would be get your own tailgate food and get that going, because it is a night game, and I would start tailgating at around noon when the Ohio State and Texas game is on. So then you've got 7.5 hours of nonstop football to watch, and then tailgating. So you want to make your own food. That would be my suggestion. But, they have really stepped up their game inside the stadium. Eddie says he is calling Hiter the hammer. This is the hammer that they spoke of. It's not a bad one, because as a running back, a hammer, this is the hammer that they were all alluding to that was coming. I like it, Eddie, where you're at when it comes down to that. We asked, Papa asked, and he receives. Here is across the street from the main entrance. He's talking about sandwiches, pastry, and coffee. Is that right on the corner there? I do have to say I did a number of tailgates right from across the street, Stadium in Maine, not right where you're talking about, but then diagonal right there at the beginning of the Pioneer parking lot. And there would always be, I don't know if they were students, but man, they had, I was going to say it's hard to mess up dogs and hamburgers. You can, but they were grilling. It's hard to mess up, unless you keep them on too long. But if you just watch them a little bit, they always had dogs and burgers there. And I was thinking, I never had to bring anything. I was a couple bucks. They were grilling them right there. It was great. Corey really likes this class. Oh, Corey, you really like the 5 stars? You really like this top 10 class? You really like the balance of getting a quarterback like Smigel a year after they get Underwood, and then you just go down the list of players from Hiter now, who's the real jewel, but the wideouts of Zion and Travis Johnson, pretty good on the offensive line. The way they went through there, pretty good defensive players when you take a look at it all the way through. And, I saw some people saying, yeah, well, they could really use a corner, or they could use a defensive tackle. Sure. I mean, they've got a long time to either flip or then after that hit the transfer portal. So I don't know I'm not trying to exaggerate. It seems perfect right now. The class seems perfect with everything that's going on. I mean, John, I think would agree with that. John, are things going perfect or what? Your Robbie says he can see Michigan winning a natty with Bryce and Hiter in the backfield. The future is bright. The rival fan bases are sick to their stomach. No wins vacated. And then Michigan lands the number one running back. I didn't think about it in terms of, the rivals who were anticipating so much of, the hammer, and then they didn't get it. Nobody was really happy with Friday. If I go back to my prediction on that whole thing, I thought that that both sides were going to be unhappy, that Michigan thought it was going to be too much. And I think Michigan fans did think it was too much. Obviously, Michigan thought it was too much because they're, seeing if they can get some things reduced. And then, of course, the rival fans, they didn't think it was enough. So from that standpoint, it ended up playing out. But yeah, if you put so much of your energy into something that you have, you don't even have any control of, that you just get upset. I don't know, but they're I'm sure it was a tough week. It's a tough week. When you just take a step back, almost all of this is just rivalry stuff. So yeah, when you feel like you took the loss as a rival last week, and then you see Michigan grabbing the number one running back in the country, that's a double punch in the gut. And if you're a Michigan fan, you can probably pull some happiness out of that. Yeah, John is doing great, 4-spot playoff meant more. Well, I mean, look, I'll sure. I know that I was just reading a thumbnail of Derrick Moore. He was the only actually Michigan football player to make ESPN's top 100 college football players for this upcoming season. But part of it, they said, Derrick Moore says it wasn't a championship season because, they didn't go undefeated, or they, had lost 2 games or whatever else. So since Michigan was undefeated and there was only 4 teams, a Michigan fan saying the 4 meant more. Would I want to argue that? No, I wouldn't. I mean, is it a time to be reasonable and saying, hey, a championship is a championship, this championship? But we're going to measure up championships. And Michigan always has that. True enough. Ohio State won the championship, but they didn't beat Michigan. And you say, well, was Michigan championship better? Well, they went undefeated, and they beat Ohio State, obviously. And then, so that team, you say, well, could that team have beaten Ohio State's national championship? Yeah, they could have, because they didn't even have a quarterback, and they were able to do it. So, yeah, I think Michigan, when it comes to that comparison or a 14 playoff, they kind of win that particular argument. Also, that is a great thing. Raby looking at the week 0 lineup, and he is talking about K-State and Iowa State, who play at noon. I've noticed that. Also noticeable in week 0, one that if you're locked in like I normally am, just on the scores that I get shown, the top 25 matchups, you'll notice that UNLV is also playing on week 0, and that Orgy is starting for them. So I don't know if it's a 2 or 3 o'clock start. So there's another game of interest there. That's right, John. And then, this is it. This is how you do things. Like if Denegal starting, are people going to be San Diego State fans? So there you go. Yeah, Corey wants to see Orgy play. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I'm interested to see if he's any better. or if they do anything different with him that could be, you can look and say, where's that been? Or if he runs wild or something like that. Mr. Martini does not like the nachos at the big house, so much so that he has an angry face at it. Wow. I gotta say, we haven't had great matchups for the night games for a while. You go back, Hawaii was a night game, an opener. I would, New Mexico. You find anything to complain about. I remember there's a Minnesota game I went to. It was a night game. It was raining for that game too, a few years ago. But the tailgating leading up afterwards is not as much fun because everyone's trying to get out of there. But 7-8 hours of tailgating is just like it. Man, who cares what the nachos taste like at that point? Eddie wants DQ Fork Paw to flip. I think they're on that. They're on the assignment when it comes down to seeing if they could get Fork Paw. Steven was the last game he was at as well. How about that? Steven, are you going to the opener? It's a question for you. John. Charles Woodson's parents always tailgated in the Pioneer School right up close to the road. Nice people. Oh, look at that. How about that? It's one of the parts when you tailgate. If you're always going to the same spot, sometimes you see the people that the only time you see them is tailgating. There's so many great places. If you could have a Bill Murray Groundhog's Day type situation where you'd live the day, you go to sleep, and you wake up, and it's the exact same day. I think having it at a Michigan football night game would be the day that you would want to pick, because leading up to that, could you, would it get tiring after 100, after 1,000 different tailgates of leading up to the game? 2,000. I guess eventually eating tailgate food, and you might you'd look smart. You'd find the places that have the Ohio State Texas game on, and you'd say, I'll bet anybody $100 that Arch Manning throws a pick six this drive. Get somebody. I'll give you 5-1. Manning, throws a pick six. Be good. Eminem talking about smash the numbers. What's up, Mar? Mar's going, I believe, to the opener. Let's do it, man. Mar, let's do it. Let's set it up. Why don't you follow me on Twitter? We can follow you back. I'll follow any of you folks that follow me on Twitter at Dennis Fithian. I'll follow you back immediately. And then we can hook up that way. I'd say DM me at some of the other things, but I don't always check the good thing about Twitter. They always give me a notification. I'm like, oh, I think they do that on Instagram too, but you get confused after a while of looking at some DMs and stuff. Salute is talking about the ruling. He says it could have been worse. Honestly, go blue. Yeah, if you go back to Friday's show and you watch that was, for me, there was a little sigh of relief, because I know a lot of people were very confident. I know there are a lot of people. I know that at the Maize and Blue review, that for months, both Trevor and Josh kept saying that there's no way that they'll be, vacating any games, because the people would point out it's the eligibility thing. Well, they made that loud and clear. the committee did when they were explaining. So that was a very smart thing to say. Spot on. And then those two also were saying that there was not going to be any punishment in terms of the playoffs. That is not going to be out there, and they ended up obviously being correct on that. But having to hear the committee say, "Well, they deserve to, but we're not going that direction anymore. We're going to make it a financial hammer." I don't know. It wasn't all fun. It wasn't as the end result ended up being fine. But having to listen to them say, we had the big ass hammer out there and they deserve to get smashed with it, but we decided that we would turn that into a financial. I mean, you probably just plugged your ears on that. So what? Which is fine to do. But you're right. I was a little worried myself. That's it. John preferred the 4-team playoffs as well, makes the regular season maintain importance. Yeah, well, I find that the regular season seems very important. I don't mind having to, if you lose a game, that you still have a chance to get in even 2 games. I'm okay with it. But I mean, I thought that I was going to like the playoffs. I've said this a few times. I'll say it again. Here we are in the off season. I thought last year was just going to be a rollicking, like, this is the greatest thing ever. I mean, it's just football. And it was like that, but it was going to take a little time, the way they stretched it out and had the different games. It was weird, maybe is the word that I'm thinking of right now. And that's why I wanted them to keep this 12-teamer for a few years, at least 4 years. But as soon as they played it, they're like, no, we're going to 16. And so when you start doing that, I mean, you have to have a little familiarity. I mean, college football, a lot of people, if you start asking them what they love so much, they'll say rivalries, but they say tradition. And then you're going to change the playoff every other year. They're going to go to 6-10. No, let's go to 32. I would have been perfectly happy if they said, no, we're going to keep this 12-teamer for at least 5 years. Let's get used to it a little bit. It's good that they tweaked the seating, though. But you find out if we have 10 people and we all want to make our little tweak, or we all want to examine the postseason, we're going to have 10 different opinions. I'm pretty confident of that. So that's fine. When it comes down to it. Uraby's thing is 6 he likes. 2 teams get a bye and a home game. Well, they're not going to go back. I mean, so we're at 12. Here he is, True Blue Tom, talking about Babalolo. The team has plenty of depth just about everywhere. Every game is winnable. TNT, he says 1 game at a time, no overlooking anyone. Go Blue, so fired up. Tom is fired up. I imagine Tom pounding the keys when he is writing that. The latest on Babalola, I don't have a date on, and I didn't hear exactly, if it was a clean tear, the MCL, and so, or any of the situations there. So when you ask the latest, that hasn't been revealed yet. Also, whether it would be a Michigan doctor or, these guys now, I say these guys, football players, athletes, if it's, something that, to me, a clean MCL or ACL, those things, happen. So that it seems like, you get that done as soon as possible and you're all set. But maybe you're looking for other opinions here. Maybe, whoever your team is, the Babalola team, he's Michigan's team, and they have their doctors, but maybe he wants another opinion, and then maybe he wants to think about, well, why not go to who he thinks is the greatest knee surgeon in the country, whatever. I mean, so, but that's the latest, is that we're just waiting to see about a timeline and if there was a something specific in terms of the depth. I mean, that's the thing, Tom, that I'm going to talk about coming up. I mean, this team is they have depth at seemingly every position. Link looked like he was going to win the left tackle job, but Babalala was pushing him, and that was a nice situation where they had the depth there. Now they're going to have some different guys like Blake Frazier and Connor Jones. Clearly when you get a guy in the 2 deep, starter or the 1B, that everybody is on the move, that's when you hear the coaches in the offseason say, yeah, well, we had, so-and-so playing right, and we kicked him over to left, and then we tried him inside, and everybody got some reps, back and forth, and you're like, how about you settle on something? Well, when you have an injury, then, and you almost always do, that's when stuff like that, you feel like pays off, that kind of depth. Dave says recruits want to play in the big house for the all-time winningest team in college football. Go Blue. I think that is, I think that's accurate, Dave. And it's never a bad time to put that out there. You get ready for the season. The big house is the best stadium in the country, the best stadium in the world. I don't know. We're talking about. I mean, it's the biggest, and it is the best. Well, I forgot who didn't like the nachos. That was Mr. Martini or something. If that's all we could complain about, you probably complain about more. I've seen people complaining about the benches. They're too small. I get that. I do think about the last couple times I was in there. That game against Nebraska, I was right next to the student section, and I thought, I've got all the room in the world. This is awesome. The time before that I sat in the stands was the second night game. That would have been against Notre Dame. But Devin Gardner started that game for Michigan. Michigan beat Notre Dame. What was that, 2011, 2012? That was a night game. The weather was perfect. And I had a seat where, you walk in and just like right there. There was no. Sometimes you go down and you're close to the field and you're fine. You're like, oh, these seats are fine, but then you got to go to wherever, just up into the concourse, and you start walking that steps. And after the first 10 or so, you're kind of bouncing up there. You're like, I'm good to go. It's not that bad. You get to those next 10, you're like, woo! And you get to those next 10, you're like, woo! It's pretty tough. Mark is hungry for football. I am too, Mark. I am too. Rashad loves the night games. He's pointing out those Notre Dame games. Those are great. Washington in 2021 was an awesome. Was that a night? Yes, it was a night game. He says he hopes the Oklahoma game is that night next year. Very well could be. It is this year. Of course, that's down there. Mr. Martini is talking about the Woodson bourbon. Must be pouring at that tailgate. You know what's interesting about that is I remember the first time, it was all the way back, long time ago, that I went to the first game and I had a press pass, and I can remember what I thought. You get up into the press box and you're sitting there and they make the announcement, there's no cheering in the press box. You're like, okay. And I said, what about booing? No, there's no booing either. So, but then you sit there and, the windows are closed and everybody's fired up and you're kind of looking around and there you're like, wow, these are a bunch of stiffs. All these people in the media are a bunch of stiffs. They're just sitting here, not making any noise. But the other part is all the games that I had went to prior to that in the stadium, I tailgate, I don't know about keg stands, but just get, say loaded, whatever, partying for the tailgate. And then, to just sit there, in a very antiseptic, room with nobody cheering, and then and you're used to every other time down there at least having a few drinks. It was pretty weird. But then 10, 20, 30 years, then it gets to be a little bit different. I go to a lot of tailgates and I'm having a great time, and but I'm not throwing down any Woodson bourbon and everything, but I see it all. I love it all. I love seeing it all go down. Doesn't stop me from having some lamb chops or anything else. But yes, G Money, should we just sit here for an hour and just talk about the Hiter? What great news it was. It really was. There's commitments, and then there's, commitments. Underwood last year, commitment. Hiter, commitment. Well, Corey, you may very well get your chance next year, as Rashad says. Now, is Oklahoma a traditional SEC team? No. But technically they are. So you're going to have to wait all of maybe 1 year to see that. Yeah. Let's go. Let's do it. John is saying that night games are all great, except that Notre Dame game. He didn't realize how wet and cold it was until afterwards. Yeah. No, I get that. I mean, sitting in that Minnesota game, that might have been the same year or the year before, was the same way. And I have to say that I had my wife drop me off right in the corner of Stadium the Main, and I had to walk 100 yards, maybe 50 yards to get into the press box. But on the way there, I was like, wow, this rain's like pelting me in the face, and it was cold. I'm like, I don't know if I can handle it. 50 yards. I got in there. It's like, man, woo. But that, that's just like when you're used to, drinking, then you sit in there, then you go all those years and you sit, it softens you up a little bit. I have to admit, if you're just sitting in one of those luxury suites for 20 years and people want to go out and, you sit in the stands, you're like, wow, this is wild. This is like the jungle out here. Johnny says he used to always get a Philly cheesesteak back in the day. I didn't even know they sold Philly cheesesteaks at Michigan Stadium. How about that? Dennis, I left a post on the Maize and Brew Twitter, the Maize and Blue Twitter page. Okay. I don't know. I mean, there is a Maize and Brew, right? So maybe maybe you're a part of that. Guys are nice guys, I think. I don't know. We're still talking playoffs. It should have gone to 8 before tripling the field. This playoff takes too long. Yeah, I had to get a little of a feel. It was stretched out. It was weird, for sure. Okay, a few more here. We're just rolling through comments all day long. John with a tip. He says, never get the food inside the stadium during the spring game. It's been there since the last home game. Hot dog buns were like rocks. John, there was a guy that I didn't like when I was younger, to be honest, and then I ended up liking him. His name was Joe Falls. And one of the reasons I didn't like him is that I would read his stuff in the paper, and I'm like, Joe, I don't care what you think of the hot dogs in the press box. Tell me what's going on with the game. As Joe would be like, these hot dogs, just like you, I think they've been there since the spring game, what they treated us to. And I was like, I don't care. Joe. But then I went to the Silverdome the year that, and I went to the 2 preseason games. Cincinnati in Jacksonville. It was the first year Jacksonville was in for the NFL, and Kajana Carter, the great running back from Penn State, tore his knee in that preseason game. Only two things I remember about but I sat next to Joe Falls. Sure enough, I looked over at him. I was going to say, he wasn't eating a hot dog. I was going to be like, "Oh, Joe, did you like the hot dogs here?" But no, but he couldn't have been any nicer to me. Where am I from? What do I think of Barry Sanders? Do I think he's too small? How can he be the greatest of all time if they don't use him in short yardage situations? How is he the greatest player in NFL history if he gets caught from behind? He's asking me all these questions left, right, left. He's like, I like to hear what the younger people have to say. Rest in peace, Joe Falls. Joe Falls was also pretty good at press conferences afterwards. A lot of times, you have this decorum with the press. You go to the people that are covering the team or the well-heeled journalists that have been around a long time. They call on them. They say, "Well, what'd you think of the game?" Kind of ease them in. That's not the way Joe Falls would do it. Joe Falls would sit down, and he always would, instead of he would just like fire a real tough question. Why did you go for it on fourth down? Whoa, Joe Falls. All right. Sam, you're right. Sam, you're right on top of everything. We're just in the first segment here. We're talking about Savion Hiter, but it's spilled over into what you like to do for the opener. What kind of tailgate? What you drinking? Week 0? Anything else? It's all right. Hiter with a D, it's how you say his name. So, I see that spelling, and I think it's going to be okay. And then, the folks are talking about a playoff and everything else. I don't understand what Rob is talking about. Nobody cares, Rob, about. I'm going to tell you one thing. Nobody cares at all about rival fans coming in here and saying anything. You had your time, but, you're wasting it. Let me give you a little advice. Go somewhere where people care. You guys still sitting around, going the podcast, talking about, okay. Hey, if that excites you, hey, Rob, we're excited about the upcoming season. Michigan fans are excited about getting the best running back in the country and the dawn of the upcoming season where they got the greatest quarterback recruit of all time that's going to start for it right out of the gate. You think we care about what you're saying? That you come in here, try trolling us? That's pretty laughable. Come on now. I got it over the months. You were out there, you were hopeful, you had your fingers crossed, and anything else. Rico is talking about Scar, if he's got any info on whether or not Link is still getting cooked. Well, when you say still getting cooked, he had gotten better. I know there's some tape bros who were watching him. I forget who was on the Maize and Blue review over on the Den, because I had mentioned something about the Link and his pass protection. And, this, I call him a tape bro. I don't remember his name. He watched the film. He had all the 22, and he didn't like Link's footwork. He did not think that he was going to be a college tackle. But, for me, he started 12 games, one at left tackle, but, 11 at right. And so sometimes you learn on the job that way. He did get cooked in some spots, but you can get better. You say, how much better can you get with footwork? Well, I think you can get a lot better. You can get a lot better with your hands. You can get a lot better with your feet. And, whether it's getting stronger, whether it's just, the whole balance of everything of what's going on with the experience there. So, and we already saw him take some strides last year. So there you go. Johnny. The win. I don't get that one. We got a prediction. Andrew Marsh gets his first TD against New Mexico. Mr. Martini was at the first night game. Crazy atmosphere. I got my best piece of video that I ever shot in that night game. Best one. It was in the end zone. Pulled out my phone. Said, okay, don't be shaking it around. Trained it on Denard Robinson. Moved it over to the right. Touchdown Roundtree. My angle, right in the end zone. Pretty awesome. Good to see Ferris on here. Ferris's question, do you think Underwood can get a 10-yard pass with 10 yards of yards after the catch consistently? This is all we need. Well, let me get ahead to the projections, and that's coming up next, and it's coming up right now. And I see a lot of, well, these are how many yards, Underwood will get. And those things are all fine. I looked at JJ's first year starting, so his second year, and looked at how he did and how many pass attempts. I think you're going to get a similar type. They want to run the ball still more than they are, but they'll take their shots with Underwood. I'm thinking they have 25 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. But really, to your point here, when you say that's all we need, is I am just looking for Underwood to be serviceable to win games. There are so many things that go on that he needs to just get comfortable with, whether he's going to be the greatest, not just the greatest quarterback at Michigan, not just the quarterback in the country, not the best quarterback of all time in college football, or winning Heisman or multiple Heismans or be the number 1 overall pick. You have to go through some of the experiences, like being on the road and dealing with and getting the team all in there. There's going to be some bumps, not all going to be just a line where it's all great. So for me, being able to work those things and being able to, now I sound like a player, or, protect the ball, but yeah, those are the things. And then I'll give you this though, Ferris, because we might be sitting on possibly, the one of the greats of all time. So it's fun to, maybe they will just start letting him fire downfield just to see where he's at. If we take the spring game, a lot of people hate, spring game's meaningless. People hate it, whatever. I don't. But there was a part of the spring game where they let Underwood make all of the throws that you would say, when they say a quarterback can make all the throws, Underwood threw the ball 50 yards in the air. Now he overshot his receiver by 4 yards. Yeah, okay. But, he made his flip the ball 50 yards. He's got that arm. He threw one down the sideline to Browder, kind of pass that, Joe Burrow tries to throw to Jamar Chase, like a window of, a yard over there on the sideline. It was a 30, 40 yard, pass that you had to kind of drop in there. A total NFL throw. They almost hooked it up. They were down in the red zone. Back shoulder, middle of the end zone. Not, he was trying all of them. And then there came a spot where he just started peppering these 5 yard, not air yards. There was more like 20 yards in the air, because sometimes he'd be over the half or hash, opposite hash. And there was a thought where, to me, that these defenders, all through the spring, the 14 other practices, had seen Underwood. There was only Underwood and Davis when they were doing all these practices. And so there were all of these underneath passes available. And if it's kind of goes hand in hand. If you got a quarterback that you're worried about, just got this arm, and that at any point can just pop the top off the defense and just can sling this thing all over, then you're backing up a little bit. And There's a theory that maybe that defense just not even, they know it, but they didn't want to get beat. So they had to give those kind of passes up. I'm not saying that's a sure thing. That was a thought of mine. Ferris talking about Wojo. The thing, and you can have a lot of fun. Wojo went to Michigan. He kind of even embraces the thought. But if you work for a newspaper, you're training and your actual job, even though nobody believes any of it, they all think everybody, is totally biased and everybody's on the take. Any opinion that you have, is totally one-sided, and politics has done nothing to, steer anybody off that. But these guys are supposed to be objective and try to be objective. So no, Wojo actually isn't sitting there pumping his fist, when Michigan scores a touchdown. Actually, nobody is. Even the guys that that you could all name that actually are big homers, they might be slapping their hands under the table or something, but you're not supposed to be cheering. You're supposed to act like a professional. But as somebody told me one time, like, there's really nothing on the back of that press box that says, hey, you want to wear a big, Michigan hat in there? And, you big homer anyways. Why not just wear a big Michigan hat? Fans don't care about any of that stuff. Let's go. No cheering. That's ridiculous. It's there. All right. Am I growing a playoff beard? A little early for that. I said I was moving on to some of these projections, but here's Sam, who says Savion has an Adrian Peterson comp, in my opinion. I have to admit that I watched 2 minutes yesterday of Hiter film. Whatever was available, somebody had it up, and I watched it. And Adrian Peterson, I totally saw that. That was one of the names that I thought of as well. He had this thing, and there was some of these runs. I don't know. It looked like, I don't know if I saw 10 runs, 7 of them. It looked like you could drive a Mack truck through the hole. I mean, he looked great. He came plowing through, untouched, and was going 70 yards. Couple catches, saw some nice hands there from Hiter, but there were 2 or 3 runs where he was in there and just getting to the second level, and he made these. This might be where the Peterson ones. He was slapping guys' arms, and you could just see the upper body strength of Hiter, and that's. I was thinking the same thing about Adrian Peterson, no doubt. Somebody donate a Michigan headset to Dennis. I'm hoping that Underwood, the next time the media is assembled, he was given away for his 18th birthday. He was given away the Michigan Beats by Dre. That's a hell of a gift, to be. I don't know if he handed 105 out or if he got more to give them to the coaches. They get a couple more. Hand them over to the media. No, he's not going to do that, but I could still, think about it anyways. I don't think, William, I'll have to call up Doug Karsh, who does the radio, and I'll have to ask him if he wears a Michigan headset. It'd be interesting. Hiter's first game will be in Germany. Nobody else thinks that funny. Just kidding. Yeah, anything to do with Hitler and Germany, I think you just stay away. There's really nothing funny about it. So I mean, I that's it. I see what you're saying there. It's also, you got hail, with Michigan, but no, I mean, you move past that. So Michigan State a couple of years ago. Were they even trying to be funny, or was it not funny at all? And they got called out for it. Oh, there was the picture of Hitler on their jumbotron, but I forgot if it was a trivia question or something. I don't remember if it was in bad taste. They ended up getting skewered for it. Like, who thought that was a good idea to put into the trivia challenge? But no, that was it. So yeah, I'm on to projections here when it comes down to it. And all year long, I was projecting, you don't want to just be right down hey, let's just project what everybody else is, kind of thinking, like a very reasonable pick. You want to go on a limb on some things. I thought my nice, whether you want to call it a hot take or anything else, was that Michigan's offensive player that was going to lead them in targets and receptions was going to be Hogan Hansen, the tight end. And my thought there was that was after the spring game. You saw how Hoffman had caught all those balls from Bryce Underwood. We know that the young quarterbacks like to use their tight ends, their safety blanket, all those kind of things. And so, and Hansen, I thought was going to be the guy. Hansen's I don't know what he's dealing with, but he's dealing with something. He's going through practices and stuff, but he's not, he seems like it might be a while that he could be nicked up and might not be ready to go for the opener is what I'm saying here. So if he's not ready to go for the opener, if he's dealing something, maybe he's not ready to go for the Big Ten. I don't know, but that has me thinking that I'm going to take my Hansen prediction off the table. Can I put a caveat out there unless he starts the opener? Now I'm going to pull it off the table because I don't think he is going to start the opener. So it almost seems like it's a for sure thing that it's going to be McCulley, Donoven McCulley. He's their biggest wide receiver, although he said himself that Browder's a little bit bigger, but now he's been around the block. Everybody identifies him as, doing well. He's their top wideout. He is their go-to guy. So he is probably going to be the one. He is the guy that's going to get the most receptions. So then you get to touchdowns, and McCulley's 6'5", and he goes up, and you would also think that they would utilize him down in the red zone, being as tall as he is. So most receptions, most yards, most touchdowns. You're probably looking at a hat trick for McCulley. But half of this is me being a fan of the player. The other half is I think I see something in him that I don't hear from fans. And that's Semaj Morgan. I talk about him all the time. And I thought he had an excellent freshman year. I loved when they would throw him the ball and a little smoke screen, and he would sift up through the field, and he would make a big play, and then he would make a touchdown. He reminded me of Antonio Brown. I liked when he would go out and run a little 10-yard curl. He'd sit down on the defense and throw him the ball and catch it. He'd turn it upfield. I thought he looked pretty good. I thought I saw a little something in him. And then last year, it wasn't there for him. But it wasn't there for any receivers. We all know the reason why. But whenever you talk about the receiving core, a lot of people are like, receiving core, nobody's talking about Morgan. I think that all of them, all of the receivers that were here last year, Fred Moore is another one. I don't know. I'm not really expecting a whole lot from Peyton O'Leary or C.J. Charleston, but certainly the Moore or the M's, Morgan and Moore, they're going to be out there. But I'm going to say that, Semaj, I'm going to make it a hot take. He will lead Michigan in touchdowns, touchdown grabs, when big touchdown runs. He'll probably get a couple on the ground. But I'm going to say he's going to lead Michigan in touchdowns. So that's my hot take. And I'm not even going to table it saying, if it's not McCulley, it'll be Morgan. I'm saying Morgan, most touchdowns. Other than that, I see a lot of people. This is a nice, I'll say it is a hot take. that Michigan will have two players that'll each run for 1,000 yards in Justice Haynes and Jordan Marshall. M&Ms again, two M&Ms. Thunder and Thunder, however they want to do it. Knuckles and Knuckles. But so I like that one. Michigan hasn't had two running backs go for 1,000 yards in 50 years. Now, they did have Fitz, Toussaint, and Shoelace both had 1,000 yards, but Shoelace was technically the quarterback. He's a better running back than he was quarterback, but he was a really good running back. But you have to go back to 75 when it was Rob Lytle, Fremont, Ohio, I believe, and Gordon Bell, one of the great underrated running backs in Michigan history. You got to go back to 1975, to have two Michigan running backs to go for 1,000 apiece. Now, it can happen. You just look at Penn State's running game. Katron Allen and Nick Singleton, they both had 1,000 yards last year. So you could see it. Would I bet that if that was available? Maybe. Depends what, am I going to get plus 550 on that? Plus 750? I'd have to, I'm not betting it if it was plus 200. No, thanks. I would stay away. But if I get a big number on that, maybe I would think about doing it. So I like that one when it comes down to it. Speaking of the 75 team, they are having a 50-year reunion coming up. And I think I'm going to stop by, see what's going on, see who I can talk with about that. That's happening. So that's in my projections. And my projections when I talk about the defense, I think it was Tom earlier who talked about the depth of this team. One of the things, is it a fun thing? Is it an informative thing to say Michigan has a lot of depth on defense? It's true. Do they have a lot of stars on defense? Maybe they do. Will they be able to stop the run like they did last year? I don't think so. Last year, they were top 5 in the country. I'm expecting them to not be as good against the run, but I am expecting them to be better against the pass, and I think they can be a top 10 defense. I think if I had to guess, and this is not trying to be a cop-out or anything, but I think with the depth and what they have here, I think every week you're going to have some different stars. But then ultimately, you do need the playmakers to surface to be you'd say great defense. Are we sitting back and saying, this will be a no-name defense that rotates everybody in all the time? Nobody really, no name, no stars, just getting it done and winning top 10, top 5 defense. Maybe. But I think at the end, there's Derrick Moore is a star. I've already seen that. We can all agree on that. So then it's after Derrick Moore. Rod Moore, I don't think is going to start the season playing, but I am anticipating him playing this year. He is a star. If Derrick Moore and Rod Moore, if they can get Rod Moore, can Rod Moore be ready to go by the Nebraska game, the USC game? That would be nice. Those are the two guys I'm most confident in being stars. But the next wave of, I think, guys that are sitting there that could potentially be stars, and a lot of it is just what I hear. Jayshon Barham fits that. I thought last year he was going to be better. He's been around a year. He's a nice pick to be a star of this defense. I just heard Brian Jean-Marie this week, Michigan's linebackers coach. He said Jay-Sean Barham has been a wrecker pretty much all fall practice. Now, he said a lot of nice things about a lot of the guys, but Barham being a game wrecker pretty much all camp stood out to me. Sharon Moore has said that Cole Sullivan is going to take the college football world by storm. I'm going to take his word for it. Cole Sullivan will be in there. TJ Metcalf, Sharon Moore has mentioned him, and then Lamar Morgan says, it was last week, said he wants to be one of the greats here. Well, when you're saying he wants to, I'm sure they all want to be one of the greats here. But when you say that, and he's going to be, it looks like the starter at nickel, maybe one of the safety spots or nickel, whatever. That maybe he's got that kind of game. So now we're talking about the Moores as difference makers, Barham, Sullivan, and maybe Metcalf. Now look at it. That's once you start getting over 2 or 3, now you're really talking about something. You probably would say Benny could be in that. Now we're starting to sound like coaches. I mean, you name a half dozen guys, and then people are starting to say, "Yeah, but what about then you start like a coach, and you're identifying pretty much everyone. A lot of depth on that defense. So the projection, I am saying, when I say top 10 defense, I am saying that projecting them to be a top 10 defense, number 10, when it's all said and done. That's an actual reasonable take. The depth, and then they have stars, and then they have some emerging stars. That's why I like all of that right there. Those are my projections. Now, finally, before I read some more feedback, we go to this. He's not 17 anymore, folks. 18 years old in one day. What was I doing when I was 18 years old in one day? I don't know. I was still just graduated high school. I did not leave high school early. So I was probably, having fun out as my, being free of high school. But Bryce Underwood's getting ready to start for Michigan under center coming up a week from Saturday. And that's why this is his hype train. But joining Underwood on this hype train, I've just talked about it. We had McCulley and Semaj Morgan on the offensive side, and defense, Sullivan, Moore, and now Barham. I was going to say that only makes 5, but we do have the number 19 there right in the middle. Yeah, Barham. Pretty much been wrecking everyone during fall camp. That gets you into the spot where you make the hype train. All right, let's answer some feedback and go through it. William is talking about an offensive weapon. Sometimes people are talking about things that I was talking about. He might have been talking about Hiter. U of M talking about Link has the measurables, improving his technique. Moo. What's the worst game? Michigan State? Moo U? Is that what that was supposed to say? I don't know. Aaron says we better see a 40-yard pass in the first series. Now, look, what it reminds me of, Aaron, is I said Michigan's going to run the ball on the first play of the game. They're going to run the ball on the second play of the game. They're going to run the ball on the third play of the game. That's what Michigan football does. And I thought that that's what they would do in the spring game. And then Jerry D'Ario predicted that Michigan would throw a bomb on the first play of the spring game. And I thought, well, that's a fun call, Jerry. interesting selection, especially coming from a former offensive lineman and all of that. But guess what? What was Michigan's play call for the first play? I know the spring game doesn't mean any. It was a bomb. Now, they ended up calling it a virtual sack, but they were going to throw a bomb. Someone tell this to the Michigan State beat writers. Yeah, things have changed. People are all pretty much partisan to their teams and cheerleaders now. I think they still say, we'll have to see for the opener if they make an announcement of no cheering in the press box. But pretty much everyone now is pretty much openly rooting for the teams they cover. That's been a change over the years. So that's kind of it. People like it, so that's kind of the way it goes. Do they open it up against New Mexico or save something? Yeah, I've never been one of that you need to save anything for anyone. Let's go. What do they do an end around to Semaj Morgan, like, ooh, like LeBron. Ooh. No, I would say that they'll take a couple shots with Underwood, push the ball down the field. It was like in the spring game. It was almost like in the spring game that Sharon was like, you guys want to see what we got in Underwood? We're going to let you see it. We're going to let this kid throw every pass in the book. And they did. Now, I don't know if they're going to take that approach against New Mexico, but I would bet that I think the days of, let's save things up, it's different now. And what I've seen from Sharon Moore, he's aggressive. He was aggressive as a play caller. And he was aggressive when he was filling in for Harbaugh during those 3 games, and going for it on 4th and 1. They would turn it over. He would call a pass. I mean, he's not a conservative coach. Yeah, I don't agree with this. I mean, yeah, vanilla, sure, line up, but they're going to throw the ball down the field. Does that make it not vanilla? I think too much is made of that. I know the coaches love it. They watch it. Oh, come on. If Scar was here, he'd be disagreeing with that. Marsh, the dark horse. Somebody makes you laugh in a good way. Dude makes me laugh in a good way. Who are you talking about, Dave? Who makes you laugh in a good way? That's going to do it for today's show. Thanks so much. If you are a Michigan football fan and you want to read more about Michigan football, you want to get involved in talking with other Michigan football fans like we do right here, the answer is revealed right now to you on how to do that. It is joining up the Maize and Blue Review. For the longest time, I was a sports talk show host. I feel like a sports talk show host, yet I've just moved it over to the Maize and Blue Review on the Den. People will make a point. I'll get in there and make a point, and then we're talking about something, Michigan going back and forth, and that's the way it's done. Now, recruiting, all of the news going on leading up to the opener, everything going on in college football, and that's just the start. That's what's going on. Push the button. Push the button over on on3.com that says subscribe to the Maize and Blue Review. We would certainly enjoy seeing you over there. We like seeing you here joining us. And coming up on Friday, well, a football Friday for week 0. No more needs to be said. We will see you then. Thanks for participating today and or listening or watching, whatever you're doing. And we'll talk with you on Friday. See you over on the Maize and Blue Review in just a couple minutes. So long.